You join me in the Goodyear M2 Competition, where in today's video we're going to be testing out the Goodyear Eagle F1 SuperSport on this particular car on a rather typically wet, windy and cold British day. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Hey up everybody and welcome back to the channel. As I've just mentioned in that little bit of an intro there, today we're going to be testing out and driving on the Eagle F1 SuperSports on this, which is the Goodyear M2 Competition. Now this video is going to be less so about how good the M2 Competition is and more about how these tyres compare to the Michelins that I've used in the past. And a lot of you guys know that my typical go-to tyre is either the Pilotsport 4 or the Pilotsport 4S. So in 2017, when Goodyear announced it was bringing out the Eagle F1 SuperSport, I was naturally quite interested in finding out how these tyres compare. Now unfortunately we don't have a Michelin equipped car to compare it against side by side, and I'm going to be taking this car out on some beautiful British B roads in this wonderful rainy, damp and cold British day to give you guys the lowdown on how good these tyres actually are and how they compare to the Michelin Pilotsport 4s, the Pilotsport 4S and even the Michelin Pilot SuperSports. Before we get into the meat and bones of this video, if you are new here and you do like this sort of content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, let Goodyear know down in the comments what you think of their tyres. But before we get onto the road, let me tell you a little bit about the Eagle F1 SuperSport. The Eagle F1 SuperSport is a relatively new offering from Goodyear. It's a race-inspired tyre for superior grip and handling on the roads, and it's aimed at the enthusiast markets, people just like me and you. It features such things as dual plus technology, power line covers, a power shoulder and a high force construction. All fantastic words when considering a tyre, but in layman's terms, it offers specialised power zones for high wet and dry performance, excellent footprint preservation for high speed stability, and improved handling and driving stability due to the construction of the tyre. So now we know a little bit about the Goodyear Eagle F1 SuperSport, let's get out onto the road and see how it performs on this very, very dreary day. Now one of the first things that I noticed as soon as I started driving this car was just how direct the steering feel is and just how many minute details you get through the steering wheel from the tyre. Now it's no secret that the Michelin Pilot SuperSports, the Pilotsport 4 and the Pilotsport 4S do have a softer sidewall than that of the F1 SuperSport, and you can definitely tell as soon as you start driving. The car doesn't feel like it's leaning on the tyre as much as it would do with the Michelins, and what that gives you as a driver is a bit more confidence in the corners. And yes, you do get a little bit more noise from the road, but the noise increase is very negligible. It's not something you will notice, especially if you do have the radio on, even at a low volume. Now as you can see in front of me here, the road is incredibly wet. There's a lot of standing water, and that brings me nicely onto the water vanes that are in the Goodyear Eagle F1 SuperSport. Now from recollection, the Michelin Pilotsport 4S, which is this particular tyre's main competitor, has 4 water vanes that are relatively thin running through the middle of the tyre. Now the Eagle F1 SuperSport has 3 water vanes, but they are wider, so you tend to find that when you're driving in weather like this, it handles a lot better and it gives you a lot of confidence, considering that this is a car with over 400 brake horsepower going to the rear wheels. It really does give you a lot of confidence just to push on. Now I'm always going to say that whatever weather you're driving in, always drive to your limits, do not push it too far, because no tyre will be able to save you if you're driving like a bit of a numpty. However, when you're driving on the F1 SuperSports, you can definitely feel, and you can definitely even see in the rear view mirror, that the water is getting transported away from the car and away from the tyres, and it just helps so much when you're looking at grip. Now the aim of today's video is to give you guys at home a little bit of information on how these tyres compare to the Pilotsport 4S, what the main differences are, and we've already covered a few of them already, and to give you an idea of how these tyres perform in what might possibly be some of the worst conditions that I've driven in a long time. What I can definitively say is when I compare the Michelin Pilotsport 4s that I had on my M1 Ti versus these tyres on the M2 Competition, they do definitely give you a lot more confidence in wet weather such as this. Now as you can see, we're driving around a roundabout, we put a bit of power in there, the car slides a little bit, but it's very, very predictable and it doesn't snap as much as what the Michelins do. It's almost as if the Michelins have a higher tolerance to the grip, if that makes sense, but the Goodyears have a little bit of a lower tolerance, but when it does break, it's very predictable and it's very manageable as well, and it's almost a positive thing having less of a grip tolerance. And that's simply because you know when it's going to go, you can feel when it's going to go, and also when it does go, you can manage that. Now, we've already talked about the power shoulders, so the harder sidewalls on the Goodyear tyres. There is a little more bumps and lumps in the road. You can definitely feel more through the steering wheel, and if you're somebody who wants a softer ride with relatively good grip, then I would recommend the Pilotsport 4s. But if you're serious about driving and you want to get the best feel out of your car with the best grip, then the Goodyears are the ones to go for. So we're on our way over to some B roads, and again, I just want to say, of course, you guys can see the weather that I'm coping with at the moment, so we're not going to be pushing the tyre to its absolute limit, but we'll get a very, very good idea of how these tyres compare against the Michelins on what could be typically said as a normal British day, especially at the beginning of December, and especially when the temperatures have dropped. Now, talking about temperatures, I do feel that the Michelins do get up to temperature ever so slightly quicker. It has been a little while for the Goodyears to get up to temperature, but when you do look at the difference between when you first set off in the car when you've got cold tyres versus when the tyres have warmed up, the grip levels aren't really that much different. It just takes a little bit longer, in my opinion, for the Goodyears to get up to temperature. Now let's put the car into sport mode. We're not going to go into Sport Plus today. We're just getting onto a B road now. As you can see, full throttle, we have full grip, and this is on a very, very wet road, so I'm going to have to be very careful here. There's a lot of standing water, as you can see, but it handles it very, very well. There's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind that the Goodyears definitely do handle wetter weather better than the Michelins. It's just something that as soon as I jumped into the car, I could 100% tell the difference. And when we're talking about the different properties of the way that the tyres have made up, and although the Michelins do have a softer sidewall, they do give you a lot of feeling throughout the corner. But the power shoulders that Goodyear have implemented into these tyres definitely do give you a bit more confidence when you are driving along. You don't feel like the tyre, or rather the car, is leaning on the tyre half as much when you're going through a corner. What I can say is, if you are looking for a very subjective review on these tyres versus a lot of the competition, then go and check out Tyre Review's video down below. He's got a lot of data on these tyres, and I watched his video last night before taking this car out, and it's very, very clear to see that the Goodyears perform a lot better in a lot of circumstances compared to the Michelins, be it the PS4s or the PS4Ss. But as you can see, we are driving down this B road here. We're not hanging about, we're doing 50 miles an hour. The car is jumping around a little bit, but we've got a lot of grip, and it's giving me a lot of confidence in the turning and also throughout the corner as well. And I think that's part and parcel of the water vanes and also this power shoulder, which I keep on banging on about. And until you guys do actually drive a car with these tyres on, you won't really understand exactly what I'm talking about. But take it from me, these tyres do give you a lot more confidence than the Michelin counterparts. Just general grip is giving me so much confidence in the car. Braking feel is fantastic. You don't feel like the car is getting away from you in any way, shape or form. And then when you get on the power, you've got full grip. It really is incredible that such a high performance tyre in the dry can give you so much confidence in the wet and also perform to a high standard as well. Normally there is a bit of a downside when you're looking at high performance tyres in the dry. Usually they're not as good in the wet, but these Goodyears are genuinely fantastic. So we're coming up to a little bit of a junction here. We'll see what a relatively high power start will give us from the offset with the Goodyears in this weather. Now, I've got high hopes for these. I'm not expecting 100% grip simply because, you know, it's absolutely smashing it down. But in my experience, you do get a lot more grip than what you anticipate. Let's take a left here. We've got a little bit of squeaky brakes here. Let's go into first gear. Bit of a sideways action, a little bit of a spin, and then you're off to normal. Hands down, the Eagle F1 SuperSports definitely give you a bit better of a feel around roundabouts like this. It just gives you so much direction to play with. Okay, so I'm maybe 10 minutes or so from home. I've had a really good opportunity to drive these tyres on different road surfaces, different road conditions, motorways, B roads, A roads, sort of day-to-day driving, that sort of thing. And I want to give you guys a bit of a summary as to what my thoughts are based on thousands of miles of driving on the Michelin Pilotsport, specifically the Pilotsport 4 and the Pilotsport 4S, against my time with the Goodyear M2 with the Eagle F1 SuperSports on. Now, first of all, I just want to say the Michelins are slightly comfier, they're not as crashy, and that's down to, as we've already discussed, the softer sidewall, and it just makes for a nicer, more comfortable ride. Whereas the Goodyears on the flip side with the power shoulder, they give you a lot more confidence on fast roundabouts, fast, long, sort of sweeping bends. You don't feel like the car's leaning on the tyre as much as you would do with the Michelin, but the downside of that is there is some more road noise. It may only be a decibel or two. It's not something that you're going to inherently notice should you have the radio on, you know, even part way. I'm not even talking loud. And in addition to that, another one of the downsides of having the stiffer sidewalls is that you do tend to get a bit more of a bumpy ride. There is a few more crashes, you know, little potholes in the road, little undulations, sort of uneven surfaces. It doesn't quite feel as nice when you're talking about a comfortability point of view as what the Michelins do. Now, when we're talking about wet weather driving, which, you know, whether we like it or not, it's what, you know, us Brits specifically do more of the time than dry driving. I definitely feel like the Goodyears give you a lot more confidence, and I think that's partly down to the construction of the tyre and everything that we've spoken about previously in this video, and also the veins down the centre of the tyre in order to disperse water. The Goodyear does have one less than the Michelins, however the Goodyear's ones are significantly wider. We're talking maybe double the width, maybe 1.5 times the width. So it does disperse the water very, very well and much more efficiently than Michelin's. Now, if I were to give both sets of tyres a score out of 10, it would be incredibly hard to distinguish the two away from each other. But I'm going to give it a shot anyway. So the Goodyears, I say, would probably be out of 10, we're talking 10 being a perfect tyre, maybe an 8.7, an 8.8. The downsides to that are the noise, which we've already spoken about, and also the sort of feel of the car, especially when you're talking about a daily car. Having a bit of an uneven surface does present with a little bit, you know, a little few knocks, a little bangs here, some feeling through the steering wheel, so on and so forth. If I was to give the Michelin a score out of 10, I'll probably say 8 to 8.5, and that variation there is simply down to, you know, my personal opinion. I would rather a car feel better and have more sort of response in the steering wheel, or more granular detail through the steering of the car, as opposed to comfort, especially when the differences are as small as what they are. So I value the feel of the Goodyears over and above the Michelin, so I personally would give them an 8. But if you're somebody who's more bothered about the comfort of the car and the comfort of the tyre, then you were likely to give the Michelin a bit of a higher score. Now, as I've already discussed a bit earlier in the video, your personal sort of choice is ultimately going to come down to brand familiarity, price, and also availability as well. There's no sort of argument here that Michelins are definitely the more popular tyre as opposed to these particular ones, but in my opinion, the F1 Eagle SuperSports outperform the Michelins. From a price perspective, I feel that the Goodyears come in slightly lower than the Michelins. The Michelins, you're almost paying for the name, you're paying for the Pilotsport brand, and you're also paying for the Pilotsport reputation as well. So there is some money to be saved, but again, there's also deals here and there depending on which supplier you go to. But from my perspective, I love these tyres, especially paired with the M2 Competition. I'd highly recommend, if you've got a friend, a family member, or somebody who's got the F1 Eagle SuperSports on their car, go and take it out for a drive, give it a bit of a whirl, because I can guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. But thank you very much for watching today's video. That's all from me. I'm just going to go enjoy this car a bit later on today before I hand it back to Goodyear, before it goes back to Goodyear HQ. But if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, keep up to date with what we're doing, and as always, I'll catch you guys soon.